Hey there, everyone. By everyone, I see there's 0 on currently, but hopefully I'm in the right mode. I have no idea what I'm doing. I've clicked live and it says it is live on my end, so we shall see. And I'm going to try to log in on a separate device, so if anyone does log in, I can access their comments. And while I'm figuring this out, hopefully that'll give opportunity for a couple more people to hop on. I see that it looks like there's 2 people on right now, so thank y'all. If you would, please comment where you're watching from. And in just a second, I'm going to do a little test here and see if I can see the comments. Okay, so I have us logged in on a separate device off to the side, so hopefully I can see some comments. It looks like there's 1 person on. If you don't mind, please send a comment so I can see. New Hampshire. Okay, awesome. So apparently we are live and it's working, so that's great. Thank you so much for tuning in from New Hampshire. I'm in the U.S. as well. I'm in Louisiana, so thank you for tuning in. And this is something I've been so excited about for a long time. This is one of the things that I was really looking forward to when hitting the 1,000 subscriber mark, is the ability to go live. So with me being a little bit of a social bug, the ability to go live would be exciting, I think, at any time, but especially during this time that we're in now, where we're under, or at least I am under, this stay-at-home order. I haven't really seen anyone outside my immediate family or work family in several weeks now. So the fact that this feature allows me to communicate with other people, and not only other people outside of my family, but other people who share this passion with me of paper and pens, is pretty fun. So, in all honesty, even though I love doing paper projects, the interaction here is more so what I've been excited about. Portland, Oregon. Hey there, Kelly. Thank you for tuning in. And I apologize, y'all, for being late. I know a few of my subscribers actually know me in real life, and then others I've connected with quite frequently over social media. But if you don't know me yet, let me just be very frank and say that I will be late to my own funeral, okay? So please don't take it personally. I'm always late. So I should have done what my family does, my extended family, whenever we have any type of cookout or event to go to. If it's supposed to start at 2 o'clock, my family tells me that it starts at 1 o'clock, just to try to ensure that I'll actually be there by 2. So I am a few minutes late for my scheduled time. So thank y'all for hopping on anyway and being patient with me. Let's see, Cassandra's on here too. Hey, Cassandra. Okay, guys, this is so much fun. I'm so excited. Okay, so the plan that I had tonight, the ultimate plan, is to obviously make something together. So I have some supplies here, and with this being my first live stream, I'm not quite sure how this whole process works. I'm not sure if after the video is over, I'll have the ability to add information in the description. I hope that's the case, because in the what would normally be the description of a video, I plan to link some websites as well as some products, but most of this is fairly self-explanatory, but we're going to be making tonight a swatch card booklet. And even though it seems self-explanatory, I went ahead and made one earlier today during the day just to make sure there were no surprises. And sure enough, there were a few things that kind of caught me by surprise. So I do have some kind of tips and tricks and information to pass along that if you do decide to do this later at home, hopefully it will be an easier process for you and you'll end up with a better result. So this is the little example that I made today of a swatch booklet, and this could be used for multiple types of media. So what I'm going to use my first one for personally is swatching fountain pen inks, but it could also be used for swatching watercolor as well as almost any media that you would use in your journals or artwork. So markers, anything with color, anything that you would want to catalog. And I had mentioned on some social media swatching washi tape, and I learned some things during this process today where if you want to make something similar to this to swatch washi tape, then I would recommend using a longer strip of swatch card, and we'll go over the measurements and the supplies, the paper, all the details in that very shortly. But if you were wanting to swatch washi tape in particular, I would pretty much double the length where you would have a long, narrow swatch booklet. And that way, if you have washi that repeats, it would give you a longer surface to lay a strip down. So we'll probably get into more of that later. Let me check these comments real quick. Okay, we'll get to the paper in just a second. Oh my goodness, New Zealand. Hey, hey Aura, I did not realize you were in New Zealand. Thank you for joining me. This is awesome. Just looking for one of these on jet pens for fountain pen ink. Okay, thank you for those comments. So before we go any further, I will say up front, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. So this is not by any means my own original design or concept. This was actually inspired, and I'm sure that there are multiple other options available online, but this particular project was inspired by a fountain pen swatching booklet that is currently available on gouletpens.com. And so if I do have the ability to add some information in the description box after this live stream, I will link that exact item in the description. But a friend of mine has this item, and the one that is on Goulet Pens is currently available for US $10 for sale, plus, you know, tax, shipping, what have you. And they give some details on their description on their website that their cards are 2 inches wide by 4 inches long. Now the ones that we're going to make tonight in this live stream are 2 inches wide, same width, but we are only going to make ours 3 inches long, or mine are going to be 3 inches long instead of 4. So if you were to purchase this item without making it yourself, you know, turnkey from Goulet Pens, then what you would receive would be 1 inch longer than what you're seeing now on the screen. And just to give you, let me see what I have nearby, like a common ballpoint pen to give you a size reference. Okay, and I have a ruler here as well, if I can grab a hold to it. So I'll explain shortly why mine are going to be 1 inch shorter. But here is a US ruler, 12 inches. And you can see that my cards stop at the 3-inch length. The Goulet pens stops at 4 inches, which would be right about here, an inch longer. Okay. And I want to be very clear that I'm not saying anything negative about the ability to purchase that item from Goulet pens. I'm very much, normally across the board, but especially during this time, I'm very much a big supporter of supporting small businesses and family businesses, which Goulet pens is one of. So if you would rather spend that $10 and purchase a turnkey item like this from Goulet pens, I'm completely all for that. By the same token, I'm also a huge paper lover, and I love to craft and make things, and I happen to have the supplies to do this on my own. So I simply wanted to show you the process where if you did not, for any reason, have the ability to purchase this from Goulet pens, if you wanted to make one for yourself. So the Goulet pens price of $10. Are y'all still there? Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what happened to my screen. But the Goulet price of $10, I believe, is still a fairly reasonable price for this item. But with the item that I'm making, and for some reason, I'm logged in on another device and I can't even see what's going on. Let me back out a little and see. Can y'all see my whole screen, or is it messing up for y'all as well? This was my ultimate fear of going live and not being completely up on technology. Cassandra says, okay. Okay. I'm so sorry, guys. It looks right on my screen, but on the second device that I'm logged in on, it's completely blank. Just breathe. Thank you, darling. You can tell I'm nervous. You are exactly right. Okay, well, even though my second device looks completely black, I'm just going to keep going now and pray that y'all can see what's happening on the screen. So as I was trying to say before, the purchase price for this turnkey item on Goulet Pens website is $10 US. The item that I'm making tonight that you could essentially duplicate would cost approximately $1.50 in terms of the cost of the paper as well as the ring. See, it says black here too. I don't know what to do, guys, so that y'all can see my screen. Back it up, maybe. Let me... Got very close before it went black. That's what it did for me as well on my second device. On my main device where I'm filming, it looks normal. Oh, I don't know what to do, guys. If we start completely over, if y'all could log back in. It was okay at first, then it seemed to zoom in really close, then black. Same thing happened to me. Okay. Let me see if I tap on comments. Okay, now it looks like I'm seeing my screen on my second device. Are y'all with me now as well? There you are. Okay. Thank y'all so much for bearing with me. This is pretty much exactly what I expected from my first live stream experience. Okay, so as I was saying, I think we're all together now. If you were to make this item at home, assuming that you had some of the basic equipment like the cutting utensils and hole punch ability, the only consumable supplies that you would have to purchase if you don't already have in your stash would be the paper and the ring. And for this size project for one booklet, the cost to make it on your own would be approximately $1.50 US dollars. So that was why I decided to go ahead and dive into this, because I had these supplies already. If I'm able to, I will link these supplies later. But for the paper type, what we're using tonight, and this would be appropriate for swatching fountain pen ink or watercolor or any type of liquid or paint media, and it is this Canson brand watercolor paper. This particular booklet, it comes in like a pad where it's just kind of glued at the top and you tear each sheet off. I had purchased this some time ago at Hobby Lobby for $8.99. It is available on Amazon, and I will include a link if I'm able to after the live stream. But this exact booklet is available on Amazon for, I think, somewhere around $6 US. But if you happen to have any other watercolor paper at home in your collection, this paper is 140 pound, and that refers to the thickness and the weight of the paper. So it's quite thick, like cardstock or thicker. And the Canson brand in this watercolor paper, to me, is a good quality paper. So it's very appropriate for something like this with swatching and even art projects. It is not, however, the better or best quality of watercolor paper. So for example, if you were to go up to a higher quality watercolor paper like Arches, you would probably triple, if not quadruple, your price. And although I have a pad of Arches watercolor paper in the same size, which is 9 by 12 inches or 22.9 centimeters by 30.5 centimeters, I personally could not bear cutting up my Arches water paper for a project like this, because when you triple or quadruple the cost plus your time, it would make much more sense to just purchase the item turnkey from Goulet Pens or another retailer, if that makes sense. So if you're doing this at home, you want it to obviously be an affordable project. So the Canson watercolor paper is good quality yet still very affordable. Or if you have something similar that is somewhere along the lines of 140 pounds, give or take, that would probably work. The turnkey item that's available for purchase on Goulet Pens website, I think it advertises that it uses 160 pound paper, which is a hair thicker than this, but anything 100 pound or above is considered cardstock, so it's going to be thicker. You just don't want something like a regular piece of copy paper, because it would obviously get bent up and not be able to withstand the test of time. So you just want something a little bit thicker, like cardstock or watercolor paper. And if you're not going to be doing fountain pen ink or watercolor or wet media, if you want to make a longer swatch to test out washi tape, then in that scenario, you could probably get by with just a blank index card, one of the larger index cards, and cut them lengthwise. And an index card, even though it's not going to be this quality, it would be better than regular, paper that you would send through your printer. So let me take a peek real quick here at this other device and see. Okay, I'm just trying to make sure I'm not missing any questions or comments. Thank y'all for being so patient with me. Okay, so we've talked about the main thing, the type of paper here. So this is what we're going to be using tonight for this demo. And I've already torn one page out here, 9 by 12 inches. And then the other consumable supply, physical supply that you would need would be whatever is going to bind your booklet together. And so in this case, I'm using a ring, and I will also try to leave a link to this item on Amazon for the US viewers, if I have that ability after the live stream. But if you search this on a website, it's called a ring clip. And so the main thing to be careful of is that you do not choose what would be considered like a keychain or a key ring, because those, you know, they kind of meet together and you have to pry them apart and feed the key onto the ring. That would be very damaging to these cards, and it would be not reasonable at all to take them on or off or rearrange them over time. But with this ring clip, it's not like a key ring. What it's like, you can see it has a joint in the middle, and then across the ring, you just put a little pressure and pull in opposite directions, and it comes apart like this. So the good thing about this is you can pull your cards on and off as you want to use them. And if you are swatching something like fountain pen ink or watercolors, and you decide down the road that you want to group your cards in color families, kind of like a rainbow, like have all your reds together, all your oranges, then yellows, greens, etc., then you could easily take your swatch cards on and off the ring and rearrange them, move them around. And then when you want to refasten it, it just comes together with a very slight pressure. Okay. And so the item that I will link, if I can, is for a package of these rings for the United States Amazon website. And they're really reasonable priced. It's like $5 or $6 for maybe 15 of these rings. So I had figured it up earlier today, and it looks like each individual ring would be equivalent to about 40 cents. So it's a very reasonable purchase. But if for whatever reason you didn't have access to these, or you didn't want to purchase 15, if you said, I'll never use 15 of those rings, some other options would be to use a twine or a yarn or some type of ribbon that would fit through whatever hole we poke through later. And you can just tie all of your cards on a ribbon. And so, like with anything in life, there's pros and cons to everything, right? So the pro of this type ring, the metal ring clip, is the convenience and the adjustability. The con is it's not that aesthetically beautiful. The pro of using some twine or ribbon or Avril yarn would be beautiful is that you could, you know, come up with a very beautiful product that if you had this, you know, if you can envision here, if you had this beautiful ribbon coming around and tied a nice little bow, it would be pretty. But the downside or the con of using that ribbon would be that it would be more inconvenient to take your cards on and off and rearrange them, because you would have to untie your bow, feed off however many cards you need to remove, and then it would be more of an issue, more work involved to restring individual cards on a ribbon to put those cards back on the string. So I hope I'm making sense here. Let's see. Becca says, I think Target might carry a package that has only 6 or so rings, and it's also pretty cheap. Okay, that's good to know. So Target, or I'm sure Walmart, any office supply store is going to have something like this as well. So I guess it just kind of depends with this unusual time that we're in as to what businesses are open in your area. And like in my area, particularly in Louisiana, in the US, all of those stores are still closed for me right now, but we're supposedly still going to be reopening within the next couple weeks. So if you can't get your hands on this now, you may be able to get your hands on these exact supplies very soon. Now, I will say too, while it's on my mind, that the turnkey item that you can purchase from Goulet Pens, it holds 100 of these swatch cards. And I made 100 cards today just to test this out. And then I'll make some more here in just a minute for you to actually see the process. But basically, this was 75 cards. This is 25 right here. So this is 100. This is what you would get if you order this item from Goulet Pens. And it's quite thick. It is about 1 3/4 standard thickness. But the package of ring clips that I mentioned that I plan to link from Amazon, that's like $6 for 15 clips. That is for a 2-inch ring, which you would definitely need if you wanted to have that many swatch cards. This ring is what I happen to have in my current collection. I plan to order some more of those 2-inch rings myself. But this ring is more like a 1.5-inch diameter. And when I tried to put all 100 cards on here, it was just sticking up in all different directions. And I like the idea or the ability to store this item flat. So instead of it, you know, sticking up like this, I like the idea of being able to tuck this flat in a drawer or on a shelf or somewhere. So this is on a 1.5-inch diameter ring, 75 cards. So you could do, I would say 50 to 75 cards very nicely on a 1.5-inch ring. If you have some rings in your collection already that are smaller, you're going to be able to do less cards. If you want to have the ability to do 100 cards over time, then you definitely are going to need a 2-inch ring, if not larger. Okay. Target isn't open for you. Okay, our Target actually is open, Becca. I've only been there a couple times because I'm going out very infrequently. But our Target is open. You are right. I guess what I was referring to earlier is our office supply stores are still closed. Like we have a local Office Depot and they're still closed. But yes, our Target is still open. If you don't mind, let me know, comment like where you found that item in Target. Was it in their school supplies or where they have notebooks and planners and kind of their stationery office supply section, or what part of Target did you find those clips in? But okay, so we've discussed the type of paper, the fact that what I'm making is 2 inches by 3 inches, where the inspiration product is 2 inches by 4 inches, the type of ring necessary to secure it, and the fact that in a pinch you could use some type of twine or ribbon or yarn to secure this instead of a ring. Okay, so there's plenty of options to do this, and I'm going to be giving you some other tips when we get into it about, you know, alternatives. Okay, so this is what the finished product looks like, and I'm trying to see how many people are on here. It looks like we have 6 people on here. I would really like, I'm going to set a goal. If we can get to 10 viewers, I'm going to do a giveaway. And I'm going to give this to one of y'all. So I'm looking at my screen right now. We have 6 viewers. So if you know anyone, like friends or, you know, planner buddies or journaling buddies, if you want to share this or invite them, y'all know me, I'm probably going to give this away irregardless, but I hopefully would like to get 10 viewers, and then I'll give you all the rules for the giveaway. How about that? We'll compromise. So for now, I'm going to put the finished product to the side, and let's just get into the making of the goodies. Fran is on. Hey, Franny. Sorry I'm late. Hey, I'm so glad y'all are hopping on. Y'all are just making my night. Okay, so we mentioned earlier when we were talking about the type of paper, this particular pad that I'm using is 9 inches by 12 inches. So that is what determined me going with the 2-inch by 3-inch swatch card instead of 2x4. I was trying to get the most benefit out of what I had and not have a lot of wasted trim or excess. So with 9 being divisible by 3 inches, and 12 being divisible by 2, you would get 6 across on the 12-inch side. Each one of these pieces of 9 by 12 paper will end up yielding 18 of these little cards, okay? And this may or may not be the appropriate time to say this, but I'm just going to say what's on my mind because y'all know I'm kind of like squirrel and I'll forget something. But one great thing about a project like this is that just because the turnkey purchase option happens to have 100 cards, you don't have to have 100 cards to have a swatch booklet. So use what you have, and if you can only make 40 or 60 or 80 or whatever the case may be, or say you have the supplies but you get into this project and you either just get tired of doing the work or something unexpected comes up and you need to stop and leave, you can make 40 or 50 of these and then stop, and you still have something completely usable, and then later you can always revisit it and add to it. Because one of the great things about this project is you don't have to drag out a ton of equipment or supplies. You've got your paper, your ring, cutter, puncher, that's pretty much it. So it would be very easy to make a few of these, put everything aside, come back, a week later, your next weekend, and then make some more. So that's one thing that I definitely love about this project. But getting back to the measurements, this is 9 by 12. So the way I did this today is I cut my 3-inch sections first. And there's a tip that I definitely want to share with y'all. It's pretty important and kind of surprised me during this cutting process today. But I'm just using a little paper trimmer or cutter here. I'm assuming most of us probably have something like this already. I will leave one linked if I can. But if you don't have a paper trimmer, this could very easily be done by hand, manually. You would just need to take some form of ruler or tape measure, mark off with a little pencil hash mark every 3 inches on this end, and then do the same thing on the opposite end. And then you would take your ruler, line up your 3-inch hash marks, make a soft pencil line, and just take your scissors and cut. So you don't even have to have a paper trimmer for this. But since I'm assuming most of us probably do, I'm going to go ahead and show you now with the paper cutter how I did it today. So we're going to go across the short end first. And the main thing here is being consistent, because one of the things that makes this project look more professional is when the cards are very flush and the same size. So when you're lining up on the 3-inch mark, if you split that line or have your paper just to the right of that line where you can see the full line, whatever the case may be, however you normally cut, just do that. But you just want to do the same thing every time and be consistent. So I tend to kind of split my line right up the middle. And however many passes you make will largely depend on how sharp your blade is. This paper trimmer is quite old, so that may have something to do with it. But when I made this earlier today, I tried to make a single pass, and it was more like a score where it broke the top layer of the paper, but then I could just bend it. It didn't cut all the way through. So because this paper is 140 pounds and very thick, I ended up finding out that with this little paper trimmer, I have to make about 4 passes before it cuts completely through. So you'll just have to kind of test out your own trimmer and see how many passes you have to make at home. But you want to make sure that your paper is pressed all the way up to the top edge so everything is level. And I'm just going to make about 4 passes just to get this cut. So now we've got one that's 3 inches wide, and then I'm going to make another, lining up about midway across the 3, 4 or 5 passes. See, and it's still not wanting to split at the bottom, which after making that project today, I may have to invest in a new paper trimmer. Or a new blade at a minimum. Okay, so that one finally cut all the way through. So we've got 3 inches and 3 inches. And then this is one thing that I learned today that surprised me. I thought I've got to remember to mention this tonight in the live stream. You would assume that because this paper was 9 inches across, that 3, 3, and 3 would be equal. So when you get to the last piece, you can just count it as a 3-inch piece. But what I found was my little stacks were not completely flush. And so I don't know what it is. I don't know if Canson just decided to give us a little extra, or if it's something with my measurement here. But to make everything completely flush, even on that last remaining piece, if you line up to the same 3-inch measurement, there's going to be a little excess. And what was strange was it varied from paper to paper. So here it's almost nothing. It's actually probably the poorest example that I could give. Murphy's Law, but I just reached over into my trash can to show you. This was an example of a lot of what I threw away today when I made this project. When I would get to the last piece, when I was making the last cut, there was this amount of variation in my pages. So I just measure every single strip, even though it may be the last remaining strip and you assume it's going to be the same measurement. Go ahead and measure it out in the same consistent way on your cutting board and trim, because you may end up with something like this, which, you know, if you're not a perfectionist, it's not the end of the world. But when you have different amounts, you can see the inconsistency in what was left over today and what I cut off. So if you have these differing amounts, then when you get your final project and you go to stack it neatly, it's not going to stack flush. It's going to be sticking out all over the place. So just a little tidbit. Measure every piece. So now that we have the 3-inch pieces, okay, I'm gonna not take a lot of time here, but I'm excited. I see we have 12 people watching. Thank y'all so much. And I had said that if we got up to 10 viewers that I would do a giveaway. So I'm going to do the same exact process, going across each of these pieces and cut them at 2 inches wide, which, since this piece is 12 inches across, that's going to give me 6 swatch cards. And I'm going to measure even that last one that's left over. I'm going to measure it up against the 2-inch mark here. But I'm going to go ahead and give y'all that are watching live the rules here for a little giveaway. So I thought a lot about this earlier today because I love the idea of sharing with y'all. And just because I happen to live in the US, I hate having to discount automatically other people because they happen to not live in the US. However, we are under some kind of crazy restraints and situations right now with different areas of the world when it comes to shipping. So what I'm going to do is have potentially 2 winners, depending on who hangs around here and completes the entry process. So we may have up to 1 US winner as well as 1 non-US winner. If you happen to live in the US where I know for sure I can ship, I will send you, if you win the drawing, the completed swatch booklet that I made today, as well as a little, let's just call it a journaling surprise package. I'll just put together some ephemera and goodies to share with you to use in your journals. And I will communicate with you via email before I do that to see what your personal tastes are, okay? So if you live in the US, that is what you would win. Now, if you live outside of the US, but you've been kind enough to join me in this live stream and hang around and chat with us, then I'm going to potentially have a non-US giveaway winner as well. And what I would send to you would be in the form of printables. So that way, no matter where in the world you live, I don't have to worry about shipping a physical product. So you can still enter if you live outside the US, and I will send you a good amount of various printables along your personal taste that you can print and enjoy. That was the only way I could think to make this fair and not have to exclude anyone, so I hope y'all understand. So if you haven't already, if you're watching now and if you want to enter this giveaway, just comment below where you're watching from. If you're in the US, comment your state. And if you're outside of the US, it would probably make more sense to me to comment your country. But just comment where you're watching from, and that alone will give you an entry at this point into the giveaway. And then if you hang around with me a little while longer until we complete this project, then I'll give you some more instructions at the end, okay? So for the sake of time, I'm gonna clear my little paper trimmer. I still had one more strip to go that we'll save for later. But this is where we are. This is 12 tags. If I had cut this piece into 6 sections every 2 inches, then we would have 18 per page, okay? And what I like to do, I'm gonna drag my trimmer out one more time. And y'all, honestly, a huge part of this is probably just human error, because it doesn't make sense. You know, you have a 9 by 12 booklet that appears flush on both ends, and then you have this, you know, trimmer that's marked consistently. So part of it, I'm convinced, has to be human error. But what I realized today is when you get through trimming, if you tap your cards and stack them, sometimes, I don't know if you can see that or not, sometimes you'll have one. You see how that one card is sticking out a little further? And y'all watched me trim them. So, I mean, functionally, this won't do a thing, but I'm just kind of a perfectionist and I like everything to look nice and neat. So, as I will do a page at a time, if there's something like an outlier like that, I'll pull it out and retrim it. So we're going to put that right up to the 2" and just retrim it. And out of those first 100 cards that I did today, I probably retrimmed maybe 6 or 7. Okay. So now that we've retrimmed, let's stack this again. Okay. And now you can see, I hope, that this looks very smooth and flush on every side. So this is going to give you a very professional looking project. So what I did today is I decided how many I was going to make. I decided I wanted to make 100, make a full count. So I counted out that many pieces of paper. 100 divided by 18 told me how many pieces of paper I would need. But I like to do all of the busy work in batches. So all of the cutting first. So if I was not on this live stream right now, like I did today, had my paper cutter out here, I would just do page after page, cut, get all of your cutting out of the way first before you move on to the next task, and do all of your busy work in batches. That to me is the most efficient way to knock this out. And so assuming that we had cut all of the cards that we wanted to, from here, the next step is actually optional. And so you can see the difference here between this and this with the rounded corners. There would be absolutely nothing wrong, and it would save you time if you wanted to leave your swatch cards like this with pointed edges. Okay, so that's definitely an option. But the turnkey product that you can purchase has rounded edges. I wanted to do some rounded edges just to see what they look like. So I have this little crocodile corner chomper, corner rounder, and it punches to 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch. And I'll try to link this product below if you don't already have one. Another option would be the little handheld, the little square type products that punch the corners, you know, corner puncher. With the crocodile having 2 different sizes, let me see if I can put my finger on it. I wanted to see earlier today what the 2 different sizes look like so I could decide which one I wanted to use. And this side is the smallest, or the 1/4 inch, which is what I decided to go with since these cards are fairly small. And then this side is with the larger 1/2 inch, and you can see it's just a much more rounded corner. So we're splitting hairs here. This is nothing but personal preference. What I decided was to go with the smaller one because of the size of the card. If this card was, let's say, 1 inch longer, for example, then if you did the larger round corner, you would still have some real estate here to write on or swatch on or what have you. But with this being a shorter card, I just felt like that big round corner kind of took up some of your real estate, where you could either be writing product names or actually swatching ink. So I just decided to go with the smaller one. You can do whatever, or you can not round it at all. But if you want to do the rounder with this product, I ended up figuring out today. Let me check my comments super quick. Oh, thank you, Becca. I appreciate y'all. Y'all are the ones working this out. I'm so excited. Okay, what I figured out today is, with the thickness of this paper, 3 cards was reasonable. Okay, now this little thing is pretty stout. So you could probably do double this, maybe even 5 or 6 cards. But it's not that this equipment can't handle more than the thickness of 3 cards. This is going to depend largely on your grip strength, okay? And so for me personally, I felt like I could punch 3 cards and survive. Now, when I did this 100 times today. When I got to about the point of 70 cards, I could feel that my wrist was already starting to get tired and a little sore. Not painful, but I could tell it was starting to get a little sore. If I would have kept going, it would have been sore. So when I got to about 70, I ended up switching and just doing 2 cards instead of 3. But however many you can do at a time. However, excuse me, however good your grip strength is. Obviously, the more that you do at one time, the quicker the project will go. But what I found today overall with this whole thing was that it did not take as long as I thought it would. So it just seems like all of these tasks are very busy and time consuming. But I just turned my Apple Music on my iPhone earlier today here in my office. And just turned on a playlist that I liked. And within no time, I was done and didn't even realize, how long it had taken. I should have looked at my clock so I could have told y'all, it took me X minutes to do the first one. And I didn't think to do that, but I will say that it went faster, or at least it seemed to, faster than I expected. Okay, around everything, finishing touch. I agree. I mean, like I said earlier, there's nothing wrong with leaving it like this. Your corners are still straight, 90 degrees. I mean, it looks nice, but I do agree that the rounded corners just kind of give it a little finishing touch. And just kind of feel like, even though this is just a little paper project, I mean, theoretically, if you make one of these, something that you could have for years. So if you're going to take, invest the time into making it, why not make it right the first time and have a really nice quality result? That's kind of how I feel about it. So we've got our paper cut and our corners rounded. The next step, you would do this with all, however many of these cards that you had, you would round all the corners. And then the next batch step would be to punch the holes. And just like with everything else, there's pros and cons to that. The little piece of equipment that I use for that is another We Are Memory Keepers brand. It does eyelets on the end, which I very rarely use, but then it has these hole punches on the side. And it has, I don't know if it doesn't say the measurement, but it has 2 sizes. So this one is a very small hole. This one is slightly bigger, still not quite as big as you would get with a conventional single hole punch like you see in an office, or it's, you might remember from school. So I'll try to link one of these later, but if you don't have this, if you do have an office single punch, the benefit of that is that because the circle that it punches is slightly larger, that would be easier if you did decide to use something other than the ring to hold these cards together. So if you decided to use a pretty ribbon or some Avril yarn or some twine or something, it would be easier to go through the hole if you used the single hole old school punch. I'm assuming y'all know what I'm talking about. I have one. Of course, I didn't think to grab it. Give me 3 seconds. Hold on just a second. Okay, y'all have been so awesome so far. I didn't think you would mind me going to grab this. This is what I'm talking about with a single individual hole punch. This is going to be larger, and it would allow you to fold a pretty ribbon in half or some Avril yarn or something like that. Now, the con of this is the measurement and getting every hole in the exact same place is going to be a little less convenient. You would probably, if you decided to use one of these, you would need to measure off, and I have this cutting mat behind me, but you could do the same thing with a ruler. This is 2 inches. Each block is 1 inch. You could measure off and then kind of measure down about a 1/4 inch or so, make your mark, press your 1 hole, and then what I generally do from there is use that first punch like a template, and then just go, you know, put that on top of the next card and then punch. It just takes a little more, you know, you have to kind of look at all the angles, make sure it's lined up. It may be a tiny bit more time consuming. And when you do it that way, a lot of times your template hole will end up being bored out a little larger, and you may have to waste that and get another one and go from there. It's definitely doable, okay? So with this product that I use today, the downside of it is that even the largest hole is slightly smaller than what you would get from here, but there's a huge benefit to using this, and I'll show you. I happen to use a little gray marker that I had here on my desk, but it doesn't matter because the hole is going to get punched out anyway, so you could use black or any color. But I just took this card and looked at, you know, 2 inches. I've got this line here telling me where the halfway point is. I just kind of, in my mind, went down about a 1/4 inch and slightly below that and made a little X mark or a little cross. Okay. And just like we talked about earlier, you're going to do everything in batches. And so I went ahead and marked through all of the cards, put my little cross on there. And I love, love, love that we have this ability to chat like this, but because we're chatting through text, I'm just going to be completely honest, I don't know how to pronounce. Is it A? Okay, it's A-N-J-I. You've been commenting throughout this whole video, and I so appreciate that, but I don't know how to pronounce your name. Is it Angie or Angie? Maybe you can tell me something that your name rhymes with so I can pronounce it right, because I'm notorious for butchering names. If you're still on here. Okay, let's see. Okay, yes, someone else was asking about the paper. This happens to be Canson watercolor paper because it is 140 pounds. It is a good quality, but it's not as expensive as the Arches or other top tier papers. So it makes this whole project worth it, because using this particular paper, if you did 100 of these punch cards and 1 ring, it would end up costing you about $1.50 US dollars. Okay, so after you have all your little hash marks done, this is the benefit of this bad boy. See this little gauge on here on the side? You can move it up and down, and it automatically gives you the same exact level every time. So just like you want your cards to be as flush as possible when you make your cuts, you want your holes to be as close as possible to in the exact same place every time. Now, if you had the luxury of having, and some of you may, having equipment at home that does more commercial, like where you can punch a hole through 100 or a ream of paper, whatever, then that would obviously be ideal. But when you're punching these individually, you want each hole to be in the exact same place as closely as possible, so you end up with a nice finished product. So on this bad boy, I set my little guide at about 1/4 inch. right there. And so that little guide takes the work out of knowing how far up and down to punch, which is what I was saying earlier you'd have to know with this. So with here, you just put the card flush to wherever you set your guide. So you know it's going to be the same distance from the top of the card every time. Then you just go to where your little hash mark is that you made and line it up kind of in the center of the circle. Okay, and see that one I made a little low, but I may have to adjust my, I was going off kind of the process that I used earlier today, and I may have adjusted it a little differently when I moved the thing just then. But anyway, you can see what I'm talking about how it takes the guesswork out of how far up or down to go. You only have to decide how far left or right to go, and with you having that little hash mark there, it's very easy. You just line up your little cross in the middle of the card. And so working in batches, as we have this whole time, you would just punch out however many you decided to do in that sitting. It could be 20, 40, it could be 100. But you know, for me personally, I'm making one of these for myself to swatch some fountain pen inks, and I have nowhere near 100 fountain pen inks, but I wanted to make 100 cards since that's what the turnkey product had. So what do you think that's going to do with me having 100 swatch cards? What is that going to do to me? It's going to make me want to buy all the ink. I'm going to be buying ink like crazy just to fill up these 100 cards. So now we have, and I hope the camera is showing that those holes are in almost the exact same place every time. So it would be very easy to fit a ring through there. Okay. And so once you get your paper cut, your corners rounded, your hole punched, that's it. You just have to feed it onto your ring or ribbon or twine or whatever you want to use at the time. And then another little tip, I know we've been on here for a while, so I won't break out any ink now. I may do another video soon of, ink swatching. But there's several different ways you can swatch on here. So if you had, for example, watercolors or fountain pen inks, you can either swap your ink in one large square and then write your manufacturer and ink name or style name underneath. Or this idea that I got from my friend that showed me hers the other night. I had not seen this before, and I thought it was a great idea. She basically did just that, but then on the bottom right corner of each tag, she also swabbed the color across the bottom right corner. And that way, if you're flipping through, a large wheel of these or a large ring of these, you could just look at the bottom corner and, group them in families, like we talked about earlier, like have all your reds together and then move into your oranges and kind of make the rainbow. So that was a cool idea and very pretty. And then after I started researching this a little bit, I also saw someone on, I don't remember if it was YouTube or Instagram, but they basically did the same thing, but instead of doing just the bottom right corner, they did a stripe across the entire bottom of the card that went to the bottom edge of the card. And then they had a larger swatch up here in the ink name. But by having that swab along the edge of the card, it did the same exact thing. It allowed you to just look at the edges or the tip of each card and see what color you were looking for. So that is that. Let me check y'all's comments real quick on my other device here. May take me years to I know. I'm going to have to really exercise some willpower to not order all the ink that I want to fill up one of these booklets. Ink Flight subscription. They send 7 new samples a month. I've never heard of that, Susan Beckett, but I'm very intrigued, and I'm sure some other people are too. Could you, if you're still on, could you do another comment and let us know where to find that? Is it just like inkflightsubscription.com or inkflight.com? That is a neat idea. Okay. Fountain pen addiction. You and me both. That's awesome. Bye, bye, bye. Y'all are so awesome. I'm so happy y'all hopped on with me tonight. Okay, so for the giveaway, since y'all are still here, I see we have 13 viewers. I'm assuming most of y'all are the same. Thank y'all so much for sticking this out with me. So I had mentioned earlier that I would do up to 1 U.S. winner and 1 non-U.S. winner, and the U.S. winner would receive this little swatch booklet and some journaling goodies, and the non-U.S. winner, I'm going to send an equivalent amount of printables to you. So to enter this, I'm going to have it available only to, the 13 of y'all or 14, whatever, that are watching. So this will only be available during the live. If you haven't already, please comment where you're watching from, your state or your country. And then to finalize your entry, please list in the comments what your personal preferences would be for your journaling goodies or your printables. So what I mean by that is vintage, vibe, neutral colors, or bright and colorful journaling ephemera, because I have designs for both of those categories. So if you are still hanging around and hearing these instructions, then that will tell me that you stayed with me throughout this whole video, which I greatly appreciate. And I will take your preference as well as, where you're from. I'll have a little bowl of U.S. entries, and if there's any non-U.S. entries, I'll have them in a separate drawing. I'll probably have one of my kiddos later tonight just randomly pick a number, since there's so few. I'll just have one of my kiddos randomly pick names, and I will do a community post on YouTube to announce the winners by tomorrow, if not tonight. Okay. Thank you for the love of 4. I appreciate you. Oh, wasn't. Okay, that's okay. Hey, I wasn't here at 8 o'clock like I said I would be. So if anybody's going to get in trouble for being late, it's never going to come from me. Watching from Madison, Wisconsin. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, and see, I'll have to scroll up through the comments later to find out if you answered me what your name rhymes with, if that's Angie or Angie. But I know you've been here since the beginning, so thank you very much for tuning in. Indiana, bright and colorful. Michigan. So a lot of U.S. viewers, and I know we had Aura who was on earlier. I'm not sure if she had to hop off or not, but she was from New Zealand, which is super cool. So, okay. Yes, I look forward to doing more of these, as long as anybody's willing to hop on and chat with me and kind of indulge in my same passion. I'm very excited about this new opportunity. I would love to do one, maybe even, every weekend, either on Friday or Saturday, kind of make it a weekly thing. But my largest fear up until tonight was figuring out the technology. And I'm thankful that it worked out in the end, but there was still a glitch at the beginning. I'm just not into technology. I'm going to be that kind of grandma that has to have the grandkids come over and program the new remote, you know, because they don't know how to do anything. That's kind of me with technology. It's not my friend, and I was just so nervous that I wasn't going to be able to figure out how to actually do the live stream. But I see we have some Vegas on here. Okay, so before I close this out, those of you that are, I see there's still about a dozen of you still on. Before I close this out, do y'all have any questions before I hit the stop button of any part of this process? Supply questions, questions about how to enter the giveaway. I just want to make sure that every current question is answered before I close this out. There's nothing wrong with that. I'll be getting help from my grandkids one of these days. Good night, Pearland, Texas. Okay, thank y'all so much. I see a few more comments trickling in, but I don't see any questions. So if I can figure out how to stop this, I'm going to close it out shortly, and I'll look back to get the information for the giveaway, and I will announce the winner in a community post on Instagram. I'm sorry, not Instagram, but here on YouTube. And so I will also, I wish I would have told y'all earlier, somebody may have hopped off. If you happen to still be on, I guess just search for my channel within the next day or two, and you should see that community post. I was going to say put your email address in the comments, but you may not want to do that because it would be publicly viewable. So just search for my channel if you don't hear from me personally within the next day or two to see who won, and hopefully we can get in contact. If you see that your name is announced as a winner, my email is always in the description. It's papermademedoitig@gmail.com. So if you are announced as a winner within the next day or so, please send me an email if you don't hear from me first, and let me know your shipping address or email address so I can get you either the little swatch booklet or the printables if you're outside the US. Okay. Alrighty, guys. Thank y'all so much for being so supportive. I can't thank you enough. I'm going to see now if I can figure out how to turn this off, and we will hopefully do this another time. See you soon. Bye-bye.